Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're actually going to discuss a topic that's kind of like, you could say, a question to the channel. It was actually a topic of discussion that was being had. Most of the time, a lot of our questions to the channel or topics that we get into are discussions that are being had outside. Maybe you're having discussions like this with your friends. As I always mentioned in previous videos, post inside the comments any questions you have for the channel and we'll discuss them in a future video. But with that being said, what we're jumping into now is a person's taste based on their options. And this applies to women and men. Essentially what it really kind of reflects on is what is your taste in the opposite sex during one given time versus later on in your life when your situation has changed, your options have changed, you taking the time to reflect on what your new options are instead of being based on what you used to be able to get, and then now changing what it is you're looking for, from that point on. So generally speaking, and we're going to kind of just coin that as your market value, women and men and anybody really, they have different market values when you're young versus when you're older. And there are different things that shape that market value in the options that you have afforded to you. Now, when you are like, say, high school, we're going to take it back that far. As a guy, there's always, everyone knows this, and one reason why I like to kind of bring up aspects of high school is because it's an environment that we all know of. So universally, we all understand it. When I say high school, you all know what I mean. When I say the dynamic of, okay, there was a girl that everybody liked and they almost all liked the same girl. There may have been like two or three other girls that other, guys liked too, that came in second and third place. But for the most part, it's probably like three girls that everyone liked. And that was it. For the guys, same difference. There was probably like a handful of guys, maybe a little bit more than that small number, but maybe a good like, 5, 6, 7 guys that were like the top guys. And then obviously everything comes below that in tiers, and the same thing with the women. And essentially you have a market value within that space, whatever that is. Now, obviously when you go into your 20s, you go into the real world, you take that same confidence you had, whatever it was. If you were down at the bottom, we'll say a confidence level of, from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest. If you have a confidence level of like 2 coming out of high school, you were going to act accordingly when you went to the real world. You had a confidence level of 5 when you went into the real world, you're going to act accordingly with that. But as time goes on, as you develop yourself, we'll put this inside numbers the same way. We'll say a market value from 1 to 5. If you, matter of fact, no, we're going to do a market value from 1 to 10 because we're going to make that correlate to what your value is in terms of how people usually give a 1 to 10 scale. So if you came out of high school and you're a female, we'll say, or you're a male, and you had a market value of like, we'll say like 8, you're going to go out into the world with that state of mind, wearing that kind of level of confidence, and you're going to like the options that are presented to you based on what your last update, quote unquote update, was of your market value. And you're going to say, okay, well, if my market value is 8, I'm going to select people who's within that range of what I can select. And the person whose market value coming out of high school will say, if their market value is like a 5, they're going to select based on what their market value is. But a lot of times we'll hold on to that same market value. And even though we'll be upgrading ourselves in life, a couple of years past, maybe 10 years past, we're 30 years old, we don't always evaluate our market value. That goes for if your market value has decreased or if your market value has increased. And this is very important because this is going to affect the way that, you have to reevaluate for the next thing that you select. It's almost like checking your credit score. And it's like, okay, you're shopping around because you had like a really high credit score, like, I don't know, in the 800s or something like that. You're walking around, you're like, yo, I can get anything I want. I got a high credit score. But then a couple of years pass and now your credit's bad, but you still think you got high credit. What's going to happen is you're going to be walking into places saying, you know what, like, okay, put that on the put that on the table. I want that. Put that in the bag. I want that. I want that. And at the end, when it's time to kind of check out, it's like, oh, but guess what? Like your credit isn't that high. And then you're going to feel stupid because you're like, you know what? Like, oh man, I can't purchase that. And the same is in reverse, where if your market value is low, which is like the equivalent of your credit, we'll keep with that credit example. you walking around the store and you're like, okay, let me get that over here, which is like $1. Let me get that's $2, that's $3. And you go out and you get ready to go check out and you're like, okay, well, guess what? Like, the cashier's like, hey, you spend like about $20, but you got like about over like $2,000 on credit available. You're gonna go, oh shoot, let me throw these items back. Let me go get the stuff I really would have wanted because now I actually have that option to get it. So you get the idea of what I'm saying. Everyone needs to take time to reevaluate what their market value is. And most people sometimes do this just by the fact that, who's encountering you, this and that, whatever the case is. But sometimes we don't know our current market value because sometimes we keep ourselves in a space of suspended animation, for lack of a better word. So an example of that is maybe you're 20 years old, you get into a relationship. That relationship lasts 10 years, but in that time frame, you were bettering yourself. You were maturing. You were, dressing better. You were more mature. You spoke better. You had a better way that you just absorbed the world, and your market value went up. But because you were in suspended animation, because you were in a relationship the whole time, you don't even know. And then you get back into the world, it's a little intimidating because you don't really know what the world is like at that moment in terms of the dating world. You also remember what your market value was 10 years ago when you first got in that relationship, and maybe it wasn't as high as it is now, but you don't know it because you're basing it off of what it was before. You need to take that time to go out, really kind of do your own firsthand research, get out there, get some experience, find out what your market value is. Because if it's risen, you need to say, you know what, now I'm going to select based on what my new market value is. And the same thing for people whose market value has lowered. And to be honest with you, if we're gonna keep it, straight with each other and 100%, most of the time for women, that market value sometimes goes down because primarily from what guys want, they want them when they're young, and as they get older, it drops. It's not to say that that woman is worth less. It's just that the man desired them more when they were younger. So their market value drops simply because what they want, the woman wants, which is a man, his desire has changed. So I try to make that clear to say it's not that the woman has decreased in her value as a person. You might be a great person and you might have developed even more as a person. It's just that for a lot of men, that is not what they want, just to know that you developed as a person. Sometimes men want to be able to be there during the process that you develop as that great person. So they will value youth and beauty more. With men, women value experience most of the time. They value the fact that that man knows what he's doing, how to be a leader, how to take charge, how to have his life in order, how to have her life in order as a leader if she comes into his life, and he can say, hey, I'm going to show you how we're going to build together, how we're going to make money together, how we're going to have a future together, plan a future together, plan for our kids, plan for our kids' kids. So a woman generally values experience and maturity and growth in a man rather than his immaturity. So when a guy is young, he generally has less value unless he's just simply that small percentage of guys who just naturally has the gift of gab and they're really attractive to other young women. But that same guy who has the gift of gab and is super charismatic at 20 will not be appealing to a woman who's 40 because women want growth. And that man, though the only commodity he had at a young age was being charismatic and maybe attractive to another 20-year-old, because that's your only currency. When you get older, the currency is now maturity, experience, money, finances. You're building yourself up. So that's the true currency because you can't take care of someone off your looks. So a man's value increases, generally speaking. So even though I was talking just in general about people and people, like I said, as we get into the meat and the potatoes of it, generally for the speaking for men and women, the man's value goes up as time goes on and the woman's value will decrease based on what the opposite sex wants. With that being said, and reiterating, just don't forget to reevaluate your market value, aka your credit score, when it comes to what you can get out there in the dating world. I just think that's very important. It's something that needs to be put out there. People need to really check on that. And like I said, most people, just to reiterate, are going to know what the current market value is. But on the off chance that you've been in suspended animation because you've been in a relationship, maybe you've been putting yourself together and you haven't been talking to anyone, maybe you just, whatever the case is, or maybe you just moved to a new area and now things have changed too because your market value in this area is different than where your market value was where you used to live. Just make sure you do a quick check and take some time to figure out what your market value is so you know that you're looking for the thing that fits you. Because otherwise, and I'm just going to end it with this, is that you might get into a relationship with someone. This can apply to a woman or a man. You get in a relationship with someone, and if you find that your market value is higher than what it was when and you got into a relationship thinking that your market value was a lower value, and you find out that it was a higher value after you got with that person, you might end up finding that you want to leave that person after the relationship's already started because you realize, oh, I had more options, which is bad, at least for that other person. And it's just wrong too. If you didn't take the time to evaluate your market value, you could have avoided that. But on the flip side too, if your market value has dropped, you might be trying to get with someone who has a higher market value than you, and they might get with you for all the wrong reasons. But the way you would know they got with you for the wrong reasons is because if you know your market value, you would know, I'm not at that person's level. Just being honest. It doesn't mean you're hating on yourself, but I'm not at that person's level. So I know the only thing they want me for is to use me in some capacity or another. So let me get out of that relationship or not start it in the first place and find someone who is the equivalent to my market value, so I know that it's purely genuine. And with that being said, we're going to end the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.